You know, they say there are only two kinds of people in this world. The people who think that Newt Gingrich is actually Rosie O'Donnell in drag. And the people who think that Rosie O'Donnell is actually Newt Gingrich. Both groups will point out that you never see them together on the same side. Well, I know there are only two kinds of people in this world. But the really significant difference is between those of us who can remember our conception, gestation, and birth, and those of us who can't. Now, looking around the room, I can tell from a slightly puzzled expression on your faces that virtually all of you belong in the latter category. Along with the other 99.9% of people on the planet, can't remember a thing before the crib. I, on the other hand, belong to that tiny 0.01% who remember the earliest beginnings. And I'm going to tell you about them because they have had a profound effect on my life, a healer's life. In my case, it all started with a sperm and an egg. Of course, since you guys don't remember anything, you don't know how it started for you. I have it on good authority, and scientific research has shown that many human beings get their beginning this way. So, and although it started in a kind of parallel processing mode, I'm going to tell the stories separately before they join together for narrative clarity. So we'll start with the sperm. This particular sperm, whom we'll call Lloyd, my father's name. Actually, Little Lloyd. So little Lloyd was nestled very happily in my father's left testicle, when all of a sudden he felt a whole lot of shaking going on, a lot of movement. So he decides he's going to check in with Big Lloyd and find out what's happening. Because you know there was this thing called cellular consciousness, which means that any cell in your body can check in with that collection of cells you call your brain and find out what you're thinking. So little Lloyd checks in with Big Lloyd, and the moment he does it, he finds himself in the middle of a very strange sexual fantasy. As if in slow motion, Big Lloyd is crossing the aisle of the number 4 Fifth Avenue bus and sitting himself next to this cute little parochial school girl in a plaid skirt, navy blazer with a cross on the pocket, starched white shirt, and little white knee socks to match. And he has his hand on the warmth of her inner thigh. And as he's sliding it gently upwards, he can feel how soft the skin is. But he can also feel the tension of the muscles quivering underneath, as if she wants to pull her leg away, but she doesn't dare admit she knows what's going on. And this really excites him. And he keeps going until his fingers find the edge of the cuff of her white cotton underpants and slip underneath. And then he moves it over to her smooth, hairless mouth. And then all of a sudden, little Lloyd is jerked up out of the testicle, shot past the prostate gland, who's given a huge dose of chemicals to speed him on his way, and suddenly finds himself dumped into the warm, wet, waiting world of my mother's vagina. And there's a bunch of hormones that hit him, and all of a sudden those little mitochondria in his tail start to do what mitochondria do, produce energy. And he's waggling and waggling and waggling and waggling with all these great heads and he doesn't know why, he doesn't know what he's doing, but he knows he just has to do it. And then all of a sudden, the great divide. He has to make a choice. Left, right, left. Well, he thinks to himself, I come from the left, testicle, and Big Lloyd is a communist. So I think I'll go left. And he heads himself toward the left fallopian tube and waggle, 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 waggle. And then, for his reward, or some will say for his sins, he sees ahead of him the vast and luminous egg, hanging there like a great globular chandelier. It is the largest cell in the human body, and he is the smallest. And as he gets closer, he remembers what he's supposed to do. He's either supposed to go around to the side and hold her steady so some guy can have a chance, or he's supposed to dive in. Being the collaborative sort, he decides he'll be one of those helper sperm. So he looks around the circumference, and all the slots are taken. So then he has to decide. So, does he want to go for it? Does he want to go for this thing they call immortality? I mean, immortality. Your essence is reduced by 50% with every generation. Or kind of stand aside, stay himself, and die with dignity. So with all the indecisiveness of Hamlet, he starts swimming back and forth, trying to decide what should he do, when suddenly he feels the eggs are swelling in his direction, and before he knows it, these two little arms of protoplasm have gone out, grabbed him and pulled him in, his tail falls off, and he dive bombs towards the nucleus. And what about the egg? What about the egg? The egg, who we will call Minna, my mother's name, actually Little Minna. Little Minna is sitting there nestled in my mother's left fallopian tube, feeling a little nostalgic for those days back in the coziness of the ovary with all her other sister eggs. And she's asking herself, why 3 months ago, when they asked for a volunteer for this mission, did I waggle my little surface proteins and say, take me, and start that whole maturing process that got me here? Why? But just then, she starts to feel a lot of movement. She decides she will check in with Big Minna. This is not something she does very often, because usually when she does, Big Minna is locked in resentment towards Big Lloyd, and it's not a lot of fun. But this time, something else is going on. Big Minna's kind of relaxed and also excited. And she's really going at it, and she's thinking, she's heard about this thing called an orgasm. And maybe this time, for the first time, she'll actually have one. And she's really going on for the ride, but she barely gets out of the gate when there's an explosion somewhere, way in the distance. All action stops. At least to Big Minna. Little Minna can feel the movement of millions of squiggly guys. And this is kind of exciting, until they round the bend and she actually sees them. And they are so pathetically eager. She doesn't know if she can bear to hook her fortune and her future up with any of them. And then suddenly she spots this one guy swinging back and forth with compelling indifference. And she decides that's the one I've got to have. And so she kind of swells herself very, very, very big till her membrane is touching his membrane, and then wham, she grabs him and pulls him in. And the moment she does that, she realizes she has made a terrible mistake. She has grabbed the wrong sperm. Well, you all know what that's like. Like a life-destroying decision, you know. You buy the Porsche, you drive it too fast, you crash it, and you should have bought the Lexus. You decide you really don't care for those cold northeastern winters, you choose Stanford over Harvard, and you never make those important social connections that could have created a really important career for you. These life-destroying decisions, which in my case, were actually made for me, because I wasn't exactly me when they were made. But I have to tell you, I do not dwell on these inauspicious beginnings, because I don't have a lot of time to do that. I have to create, from this single cell that I am, the fertilized egg, a billion-cell viable human infant in just 9 months. So I can't sit around thinking about things like this. And indeed, I don't. Until a day, 3 months into all of this, 3 months into what people will call, laughingly, my life, when I suddenly realize I'm not alone. There's something else, or someone else in the room with me. And this thing, or this object, seems to be somehow connected to my mother. And I'm very excited about this. Because I haven't heard a word from her in all this time. No, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome aboard. Not only has she not spoken to me, she has not spoken of me. She hasn't even told my father that I exist. So I think, wow, communication from mommy. So first I send out these chemical signals, boing, they just bounce right off. And then I send these little flashing lights, and I send these electromagnetic signals. Nothing's coming back. It's getting closer and closer. And then I realize it is not like me. It's not alive. And it's stuff that's made of is much denser and harder, and it seems to be very long and come to a point. And if there is contact, it will be not communication, but annihilation. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I realize I must take immediate action. So I press myself up against the wall of the uterus, and I send the following message up the umbilical cord. If I go down, you're going down with me. I am going to cling so tightly to the wall of your uterus, you're going to have to scrape yourself into a fatal hemorrhage to get rid of me. Bitch! And this thing, which I later learned is called a knitting needle, stops, trembles a little, and it goes. Well, I'm sorry to say that this little exchange has characterized my life with my mother ever since. Well, except for what you might call our honeymoon period. When I was 3 years old, my mother discovered that even a very small child could be taught how to adeptly perform oral sex on an adult. The first time it happened, we were in the bathroom together. She wiped, she flushed, she edged herself forward on the American Standard, a brand I was to get to know very well in my decades of bulimia. She reached out and grabbed my arm and pulled me to her. And then she took my index finger, she spread her legs apart, and she stuck it inside her and moved it around. Then she pulled it out and put it on her clitoris and waggled it back and forth. And then, to show me exactly what she wanted to do, she took my finger and she put it in her mouth. She pointed to her clitoris and she pushed my head between her legs. Well, of course, there was a part of me that wanted to please my mother, the part of me that wanted to survive. And so I went, until I heard her moan, and I felt her shudder, and I felt her knees press against my head like a vice, and then release and let me go. From then on, we did it mostly on top of the nubbly bedspread over the bed my mother shared with my father. And where was I in all of this? I mean, where was I really? Well, I couldn't be in my nerves, because then I would feel my mother and smell her and taste her, and I would scream. So I couldn't be in my nerves. And I couldn't be in my muscles, because then I would bite and I would run away. So I couldn't be in my muscles. So I went out into my ligaments. You know, those tissues and all the joints in your body where you can just go and hang out and be kind of spacey and not really there. I would go out into my ligaments until it was all over, and then I would come back. So of course, for most of my life, I remembered nothing of this. Now I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking, especially those of you from Marin. You're thinking how lucky I am. I mean, how lucky I am, because without these events, I would not be me. I would not be a healer. I might have a talent for doing something else besides spending all my time in the darkest part of other people's lives. And trying to figure out why they do what they do, and why I do what I do. And I know the other thing you're thinking. With all this time devoted to this, are you healed yet? Are you healed? yet. Well, I no longer have masturbation fantasies in which little blonde-haired girls of 3 lick their mother's clitoris until mommy explodes in ecstasy. And I no longer see my mother's vagina huge in front of my face with every fold and every hair intact. I no longer date guys named Joey who sell over-the-counter stocks to the mafia and take off the jackets of their perfectly tailored Armani suits to reveal guns and shoulder holsters under their arms. I no longer date guys named Felipe who get high on cocaine, fuck you like a machine, scream, I love me when they come, and then whisper into your ear, oh, sweetheart, but what I'd really like to do, what would really turn me on, would be to put a cigarette out on your breast. And couldn't we just this once? I no longer date trust fund babies named Bruce, who confide to me how they were thrown out of 5 of the top prep schools in New England, each time for burning something or other to the ground, and who sleep with Bowie knives under their pillows. But there are times, late at night, when the impulse to chew and swallow, chew and swallow, chew and swallow, in spite of the fact my stomach is screaming, enough, 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 is overwhelming. Because I cannot bear to feel my face in my mother's crotch, or my father's penis rammed down my throat, and I eat until I am immobile. So am I healed? Am I truly healed? Not completely. But for now, I am alive, and I am hopeful, and that is healing enough.